Hey y'all, so today's video is going to be on the Smith & Wesson 329 PD44 Magnum. And I wanted to give a disclaimer for this video. Now, I recommend you watch this one in its entirety, especially the ending part, because I'm going to go back and forth on some pretty big pros and cons on this gun, and one pretty big con at the end that I'm going to save till the end so I can get through the rest of the review. So I just recommend you watch the whole thing if you can, and let's get into it. Here we are on the bench, and I must say this is quite the interesting gun to review. There's plenty of videos out there on the internet of people claiming this gun is insane to shoot, kicks harder than a 500 Magnum, so on and so forth, but not a lot of actual reviews out there on the gun itself. There's a few people out there I know, like Nothing Fancy, and a few others have done reviews, but not a lot of full reviews on this gun, so I was excited to do one. So I guess I'll start with features, since that of course is the most insane thing about this gun is, so we'll start with the weight. Weight of this gun is 26 ounces. A standard end frame this size, you're 40 plus ounces easily if you get a steel version. This is only 26 ounces. Reason being is, instead of being an all steel gun, the cylinder is made out of titanium and the frame is made out of scandium. The only part of the frame that is steel is your barrel, and then it's a sleeved barrel. So what happens is you've got the insert for the barrel with the rifling and all that, that's steel. The rest of the sleeve is scandium, and then your frame is scandium, cylinder is titanium, and that's what gives it its super light characteristics. Now, other than that, after that, most of the features on this gun are pretty standard Smith & Wesson end frame. Standard cylinder release. Your hammer is nice and wide, but again, fairly standard for most of their end frames. Trigger's all standard, right? Your sights are a little bit different, and that's one of the things that this gun kind of lends itself for carry. Everything about this gun is set for carry, and you notice that because they kind of give you the fiber optic front sight with kind of a V-notch rear. Now, people are back and forth on the V-notch rear. Some people like it, some people don't. I'm kind of in the middle where I don't dislike it, but it's one of those things where while it might be a little bit quicker to pick up in a self-defense situation, especially given that this is able to take down large game, such as a bear or something, if the situation arose, I can understand them wanting to have a little bit faster acquisition sight where pinpoint accuracy might not be needed. But honestly, I could take it or leave it. I don't mind it. Of course, you can change out for the standard Smith & Wesson square notch, but they did change that on this gun to make it a V-notch for a little bit easier sight acquisition, all that. Again, other than that, really not too many different features. One thing you will notice, and I'm going to mention this because I've seen quite a few people ask on the internet, is this little thing up here. Here, I'll take out the dummy rounds, make it easier, right? So you'll see here, this little plate up here. A lot of people ask what that is. That is a steel plate, because what can happen is, because this is scandium, Smith was worried about flame cutting in the gun, so they insert this little steel plate here that prevents flame cutting. People, again, once they know what that is, they do ask about wear on that. A couple hundred rounds through this gun, and I don't know how well it's going to show up on camera, but besides being dirty, no noticeable wear in the gun. So haven't noticed any problems with that. Haven't noticed any stress marks or anything on the scandium, any signs at all that the gun is, tearing itself apart. One thing to note is you'll see how the titanium cylinder is dirty. The titanium cylinder is actually quite a pain to clean. Most people just leave them dirty, kind of as like a mark of, hey, I actually shoot this thing. I've pretty much left mine dirty. I do scrub it a little bit, but I do not worry too much about there being powder burns on the front of the cylinder. Now, the final thing I want to cover in features is the grips, and you might notice that there's several different grips on the table. One of the big things when people talk about this gun is the recoil and the fact that 44 Magnum in this gun is excruciatingly painful to shoot. Reason being is when you first get your gun, now this is current production, they've changed the grips a couple times over the years, but this I have current production. You get these two grips. The gun comes with these beautiful grips. Now these grips, of course, they're Smith & Wesson branded, but they're made by Altamont Grips, who make beautiful wood grips, and I must say, in the hand, they feel really nice in the grip. It's kind of a square butt conversion grip, right? Because it comes down here. Which something I should mention: this gun is a round butt gun, even though pretty much all these grips are a square butt conversion, I guess, except for this. These wood grips on this gun, I've never fired a gun with this, but I've talked to people who have, and basically it's something you do once. So that is one of the big downsides to buying this gun, is if you buy this gun, you're pretty much going to immediately take these off and going to have to get a different set of grips. Now they do ship with a separate rubber set, but this is just standard Smith & Wesson rubber grip. Honestly, I don't like them. The feel in the hand isn't terrible, but they don't offer much in the cushioning department, so I honestly don't like them. What I do recommend for anybody who has one of these or is planning on getting one of these, anticipate getting a set of the Hogue Tamer grips. They will make shooting this gun much nicer, and they're luckily not too expensive. Now the OD version is kind of hard to get, but you can get the standard black version pretty easily off Amazon for $20 or $30. So that's pretty much the features of the gun. Alright, so let's move on to accuracy in the actual firing of the gun. So I'm going to probably splice some video in of me shooting the gun, and as you can see, it's a handful, but it's very manageable with those grips. So here I brought up some targets. Now, normally when I try and shoot targets for reviews, you'll see here where I had a pretty tight group. That was slow fire and everything, right? That was a pretty tight little group. I think that was 3 shots, right? Decent group. What I wanted to do for this gun is, because everything about this gun is set up for basically carrying it and using it, I wanted to shoot a fast group. So basically what I did was, this was 7 yards as fast as I could fire it, fire, realign sights, and fire again. So basically fast fire, right, 7 yards, and I'd say that's a pretty good group. That was a 240 grain semi-wad cutter, hence the nice holes, and I think that's a pretty good group. The gun is decently accurate. The biggest thing with this gun, I think, for accuracy is breaking your flinch. I've seen a lot of people not be able to hit the broadside of the barn with this gun. Reason being is the fact that this thing can kick like a mule, depending upon how used to high recoil guns you are, and all that. But once you get a hang of this gun, and if you've got a decent set of grips on the gun, it really is an accurate revolver, and I found no issues with accuracy. Alright, so next we're going to talk about aesthetics. Now aesthetically, if you were to place this next to a beautiful blued classic revolver with beautiful wood grips, of course it's no contest. Of course that's going to be a much more beautiful gun, but I think this gun's nice in its own way. Now this has a matte black finish on this. I don't quite know what the finish is. I'm sure you could do some extensive digging on the internet. They would tell you, but Smith & Wesson does not tell you on their website. But I think it's got a nice finish being flat black, and to be honest, I kind of like it more than if this gun was all glossy, because the titanium cylinder, now this is raw titanium, they don't actually put a coating on this, so I think it adds a nice two-tone look, especially if you can get a set of the Tamer grips in a different color. It kind of makes them pop a little bit. I think at the end of the day, the gun is pretty aesthetically pleasing, especially when you flip it over. You've got your little airlight PD symbol, little atomic symbol there, right? I think it's a nice, clean gun. Save one thing, and that I'm going to get on this at the end, but there was some issue with the laser engraving, but again, I'm saving that for the end. But again, I think aesthetically it's not a bad looking gun, and I've had no excessive finish wear. That's a notice. I did carry this gun for a little while, and it doesn't seem like the finish has come off at all. So I've said a bunch of good things about the gun. I think on paper it's a really good gun to carry if you do like to carry 44 Magnum. It's pretty much the lightest 44 Magnum on the planet. It's definitely, I think, in my opinion, one of the coolest on paper 44 Magnums out there. Let me put it this way: I think if they redid for Dirty Harry today, they would probably have Dirty Harry carrying a 329 PD. But that's just my opinion. I'm sure if they redid it today, they'd probably get like a Glock 10 millimeter, something like that. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's a pretty cool gun and a really cool design, and that's kind of where we have to change gears. So here's the part of the video that I said you all should wait and make sure to watch the whole thing, and that is reliability. So reliability on this gun, if you get one that's built good, then you're golden. These guns, what you would expect from Smith & Wesson. Lockup on this gun, very good, very tight, right? Trigger pull on this gun, fairly smooth, right? Good trigger from what I've heard online. It's just under a 5-pound pull in single action. So, what you would expect from a Smith & Wesson. Problem is more and more lately, more people are saying that Smith & Wesson quality control is going extremely downhill. They're kind of in a lull in quality right now at the moment, and I happen to get one of those guns. This gun had to go back twice to Smith & Wesson for two major issues. Well, one major issue and then a cosmetic issue. I guess the other one's not real major. But the first one is the cosmetic issue, and this is minor, but I'll mention it, is they messed up the laser engraving, right? The word Smith & Wesson and 44 Magnum was crooked. Now, that's not that big of an issue, and people, oh, what's the big deal about laser engraving, except for this is not a cheap gun. This is, I believe, almost $1,200 MSRP, so you're kind of expecting quality, and it makes you wonder if they screw up the laser engraving, what else have they screwed up? So the gun had to go back. The first time they fixed the laser engraving. I don't know how now it shows up, but you'll see here the 44 Magnum is still crooked. It's supposed to be centered. If you go look on their website, they show it centered. It's still crooked. It's still at the bottom of this flat part where it's supposed to be. But that wasn't that big of an issue. So they ended up having to replace the entire sleeve on the barrel and then re-laser engraved it. And now we get to the bigger, much bigger of the two issues, was the fact that there was a huge mechanical gremlin in this gun. I started finding out that shortly after purchasing this gun, that the trigger would not always reset back after firing it. So you'd be firing a gun, right, bang, 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 and some of the times when you went to, after the hammer would fall, and you would go to have the trigger reset, it would get stuck halfway through, making it that to fix it, you would either have to pull on the trigger again to get it to pop back, or lift up on the hammer to get it to pop back. And while at the range, that's only a minor annoyance. Obviously, this gun is not designed as a range toy. It's designed as a carry gun, and especially it's designed as a carry gun for sometimes large game, and that's not the kind of hiccup you want to have in a gun. So the gun had to go back twice. The first time they replaced the sear in the gun, and I got it back and the issue was not corrected, which once again was another shining example of how Smith & Wesson quality control has gone out the window because they weren't able to fix it the first time. The second time the gun went back, they basically tore through the gun with a fine-tooth comb, and after an extensive phone call with their one of their supervisors about it, they told me that they replaced the sear again and the entire hammer assembly, and that seemed to fix the problem. I've had this gun back a little while, and sadly the ranges are all closed, but you'll notice there was snap caps in it because I have been dry firing the hell out of it, and it seemed to have fixed the issue, and there's no longer a problem. But at the end of the day, that is basically, at this point, the gun's kind of turned into a Franken gun because, the sleeve on the barrel had to be replaced and most of the internal stuff had been replaced to get the gun reliable, which is something I gotta mention. Like I said, if you get a good one, you probably won't run into any of these issues, but more and more lemons seem to be coming out of Smith and Wesson lately. You can go look online. There's a lot of people having problems with that. I happen to get one of them, and it's something that I feel I have to mention. But other than that, I hope that now the gun should be fairly reliable. Again, I've only been able to do dry fire with it, but I have dry fired it probably at least 100 or so times at the TV sitting bored, again, quarantine life. But yeah, just something to keep in mind. Basically, when I finally did get the guy to admit like what the actual problem was, and he basically said that it was some of the new MIM parts they're using. Basically, the MIM parts was the excuse he gave me for why the hammer assembly had been formed incorrectly, and that was why it was creating the hang up, was because of an issue there. So that's why they replaced everything. But other than that, it's a really cool gun. If you get a good one, like I said, it's a pretty cool gun. It's you never thought. I guess when the end frame came out, and Elmer Keith finally pushed Smith into making one. I guess he never thought that they'd be making them, out of space age materials such as titanium and scandium, and they'd weigh a lot less than some of your Glocks out there, or I guess as much as a Glock out there. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the gun. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them, and have a good day.